The arrival of the beast. Jackson Reese had always thought that life in the mining colony of HumanityFYeah was as mundane as it could get. He woke up every day to the relentless hum of machines, the dust of broken rock, and the cold, sterile feeling of the caverns that had been carved out by generations before him. HumanityFYeah was nothing more than a dead rock in the middle of nowhere, valuable only for the rare minerals buried deep beneath the surface. Jackson had accepted that. He had no desire for the stars or the grand adventures that others dreamed about. His life was simple: work, eat, sleep, repeat. But everything changed the moment the sky cracked open. It started with a low rumble, almost imperceptible at first. It was the sort of thing you'd ignore if you weren't paying attention. But then came the tremor, a violent shake that rattled every light in the colony. The ground beneath Jackson's boots heaved as though some colossal beast were awakening from its slumber. "What the hell?" Jackson muttered, steadying himself against the wall of his quarters. The alarm started blaring, and a voice echoed through the loudspeakers, announcing the arrival of an unknown object in the atmosphere. At first, they thought it was a meteor, until they saw the shape. The massive ship appeared in the sky, descending rapidly toward the surface. The sheer size of it was enough to stop anyone in their tracks. Jackson knew immediately that this wasn't a natural event. No meteor could break through the atmosphere like that and remain intact. Before anyone had a chance to react, the ship crashed onto the outskirts of the colony, sending a shockwave that flattened nearby buildings and sent debris flying into the air. Jackson had been knocked off his feet, and the dust settled, choking the air as the tremors continued. "Get up, Reese," he muttered to himself as he scrambled to his feet. He could hear the sounds of panicked voices outside and the shrill tones of emergency sirens. Without thinking, Jackson sprinted toward the crash site. His mind raced. What kind of ship was that? Who, or what, was inside? As he neared the wreckage, he could see that it was unlike any ship he had ever seen. It was massive, dark, with strange, organic curves. It looked like it had been forged by some alien species. But there was no sign of activity. "Where's the emergency crew?" Jackson whispered under his breath, scanning the wreckage for any signs of life. His hand hovered over the weapon holstered at his side. It was standard issue, just in case things went south. Suddenly, a low growl came from the shadows near the wreckage. Jackson froze. Out of the haze stepped a towering figure, something that looked like a creature from a nightmare. It was enormous, with black, scale-like skin, and a muscular frame that seemed to shimmer with a deadly energy. Its eyes glowed with a fierce intensity, and its long claws dug into the earth as it moved forward. The creature stood before Jackson, and he instinctively drew his weapon, aiming it at the alien's chest. His heart was racing in his chest, but he didn't let the fear control him. "Stay back!" Jackson shouted, his voice steady, but the weapon in his hands wavered. To his surprise, the creature did not attack. Instead, it dropped to its knees, lowering its massive head before him in what appeared to be submission. Jackson's eyes widened. The beast, which should have been a force of destruction, now appeared to be bowing before him. The growl he had heard earlier turned into a soft, almost mournful sound. It was as if the creature was acknowledging him. What the hell are you?" Jackson muttered, his weapon still raised, though his grip was loosening. A voice broke through his confusion, soft and steady, yet filled with urgency. "Jackson." Rhea Corrin, the colony's lead scientist, rushed toward him. "Get away from it." Jackson didn't move. His eyes remained locked on the strange beast. "It's not attacking," he said, voice almost shaking. "It's bowing." Rhea looked between Jackson and the creature, her brow furrowing. "Impossible," she breathed. "The Xereks aren't known for such behavior. This isn't just a beast. This is something else." Jackson could hardly believe his own words, but there they were, standing in front of him, an alien that should have been a destroyer, but instead, it was submitting to him. The creature, this Xereks, was waiting for something. But what? Secrets in the void. The mining colony was in chaos. The once peaceful and quiet world of HumanityFYeah had become a battleground in the blink of an eye. Emergency teams scrambled to secure the area around the crashed ship, and the colony's leadership had already called for reinforcements. Jackson and Rhea, however, were preoccupied with a much more immediate concern, the creature kneeling before them. It was still there, waiting silently, its enormous frame blocking the view of the crash site behind it. Jackson could feel the strange pull of its presence. This wasn't just a beast, no, this was something far more intelligent, far more dangerous, than anything he had encountered in his lifetime. Rhea stood next to him, her breath shallow, trying to process the impossible reality in front of them. Jackson, we need to move, Rhea urged, glancing at the soldiers who were starting to circle the crash site. This thing is a Xerex. It's a warrior species, known for their savagery. I can see that, Jackson muttered, still eyeing the creature warily. Despite the Xerex's imposing size, there was something almost sad about it. Its shoulders were slumped, and its eyes, despite their ferocity, seemed distant, almost as if they were searching for something. I don't know what's happening, Rhea, Jackson said, shaking his head. But this one is different. It's not acting like the others. Before Rhea could respond, a loud voice called from behind them. Step away from the alien, Reese. It was Commander Xantha, the head of the colony's security forces. She was flanked by several soldiers, all of them armed and ready for action. Xantha's eyes hardened as she saw Jackson still standing so close to the creature. I'm telling you, Commander, Jackson replied, keeping his voice calm, it's not dangerous. At least, not in the way you think. Xantha's eyes narrowed. I've seen enough of these creatures to know they don't kneel to anyone. Get away from it now, Reese, or I'll have you removed. I won't, Jackson said firmly, stepping closer to the creature. It made no movement to rise, its massive head still bowed. There was something in its posture that made him believe it wasn't just a beast waiting for orders. It was waiting for something else, something only Jackson could understand. Rhea shot a glance at Xantha and then back at Jackson. Maybe we can learn something from it. This is unlike anything we've ever seen. We need to study it, not kill it. I agree, Jackson said, his voice quieter now. If we can just understand what it wants, maybe we can find out why it's here. Xantha glared at them, clearly skeptical. You're playing with fire, Reese. That thing's presence here means one thing, it's not here to be a friend. Just give us a little more time, Jackson pleaded. I promise, we're not putting anyone in danger. Xantha hesitated. It was clear that her instinct was to fire first and ask questions later, but she didn't want to risk unnecessary conflict, especially not with the military arriving soon to take control of the situation. She finally nodded, though her distrust was evident. Fine, she said, but I'm not leaving this area unguarded. One wrong move, Reese, and I won't hesitate. Jackson nodded, grateful for the momentary reprieve, but the danger was far from over. He turned back to the kneeling Xerex. Its eyes met his, and for the first time, Jackson felt a strange connection, a bond that transcended the fear he should have been feeling. It wasn't just that the Xerex didn't want to harm him, it was almost as if the creature was waiting for something, a signal, a command, something only Jackson could provide. Rhea stepped closer, her eyes wide with curiosity. Jackson, do you feel that? She whispered. I don't know what it is, he admitted, but it's like it's trying to communicate. The Xerex let out a soft, guttural growl. This time, however, it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded almost like a plea, something desperate. Jackson took a deep breath and cautiously stepped forward, lowering his weapon. Rhea, what if it's not a warrior? Jackson said, his voice barely a whisper. What if it's been forced into this role? Rhea nodded, her expression grave. That's a possibility we need to consider. The Xerex aren't just a race of warriors, they're a race of slaves, too. Some of them are bred for war, others for servitude. What if this one isn't a warrior at all? Before Jackson could respond, the ground beneath them rumbled again, stronger this time. The ship, still smoldering from the crash, seemed to pulse with energy. Something inside it was waking up, something powerful, something ancient. The Xerx creature stood, its head still bowed, as if acknowledging the disturbance. Jackson instinctively took a step back, but his eyes remained fixed on the creature. It looked toward the wreckage, and then, to everyone's surprise, it straightened, towering above them. It didn't growl or snarl, but it did make a sound, a deep, resonating hum that seemed to vibrate through the air. The military soldiers shifted uneasily, weapons raised. "What is it doing?" one of them muttered, his voice trembling with fear. "Get back!" Commander Xana ordered, her voice sharp. "Everyone, get back. We're not taking any chances." Jackson took another step forward, his hand raised in a gesture of calm. "No, wait. Don't provoke it. We need to understand what it's trying to tell us." As if in response to Jackson's words, the Xerx turned toward him. Its massive eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made Jackson's heart race. The creature's head tilted slightly, and then, astonishingly, it bowed again, lowering itself almost to the ground. Jackson froze. The creature wasn't attacking. It wasn't threatening them. It was showing reverence. "What's going on here?" Rhea whispered, her voice tinged with awe. "This doesn't make sense." The Xerx made a soft, resonant hum, and then, in a language that Jackson couldn't understand, it spoke. The words weren't in any dialect he had ever heard, but there was something about them that seemed familiar. It was as though the creature wasn't just speaking with its voice, it was speaking directly into his mind. "You are the one." The voice was raw, reverberating in his skull, and Jackson's breath caught in his throat. He took a step back, his heart pounding. "What does it want from me?" Jackson muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Rhea's face was pale, her mind racing. "Jackson, did it just speak to you?" I think so," he stammered. It said, "You are the one." Before he could process the full implications of the creature's words, the ship behind them hummed louder, its systems coming online with a soft pulse of energy. There was no turning back now. Rhea turned to face him. "Jackson, whatever this is, it's more than just a wild animal. We need to find out what it wants before it gets worse." Jackson nodded, his mind reeling. The creature wasn't just a beast, and he wasn't just some random miner. Something was tying them together, and whatever it was just beginning to reveal itself. The awakening of the beast. The air in the mining colony was thick with tension. No one knew exactly what had happened since the Xerx, the massive alien that had appeared from the wreckage of the crashed ship, had bowed before Jackson. The creature had shown no signs of aggression, but the military was on high alert. Commander Xana's orders were clear: secure the area, and don't let the alien out of their sight. But as the hours passed, something strange began to happen. The Xerx, which Jackson had come to think of as Xeric, had remained oddly still. It hadn't spoken since that first encounter. But it hadn't moved much, either. It sat in the middle of the colony square, its enormous frame almost eerily quiet, as if it was waiting for something, or someone. Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that it was waiting for him. Rhea stood by his side, her eyes wide with both curiosity and concern. She had never seen an alien species so complex, so willing to engage in something beyond violence or submission. "They've locked it down," Rhea said, glancing at the soldiers guarding the perimeter. "I can't even get close to it without military clearance." Jackson nodded. His mind was still reeling from the Xerx's words, the strange communication it had sent directly into his mind. "You are the one." What did that mean? And why had the creature singled him out? "I don't know, Rhea," Jackson said, his voice low. "But whatever it is, I'm going to find out." Before Rhea could respond, a sudden crackling noise came from the direction of the crashed ship. The ground beneath them shuddered once more as a pulse of energy radiated outward from the wreckage. "What now?" Jackson muttered, instinctively moving to shield Rhea. The alien ship, though partially damaged, seemed to be coming to life. Its once dormant systems hummed and glowed with unnatural energy. Jackson couldn't understand what was happening, but it was clear, something inside the ship was awakening. Rhea's voice trembled as she glanced at Jackson. "The Xereks, they're not just creatures of war. If this ship is what I think it is, then..." "It's not just a ship," Jackson finished for her, his eyes narrowing. "It's a command vessel." Rhea swallowed hard. "If that's true, then the creature here isn't just some mindless beast. It's part of something far bigger." Just then, Xerek, still kneeling on the ground, raised its head. Its eyes locked with Jackson's, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of emotion in them, uncertainty, fear, and something else. Regret, maybe. Without warning, the Xerek's massive form began to stand. The ground shook beneath its weight as it straightened to its full height, its powerful frame towering over the colony like a living monolith. "Jackson," Rhea began, her voice a whisper. "It's..." "I know," Jackson interrupted, his voice tight. "It's not what we thought. It's something else entirely." The Xerek's glowing eyes never left Jackson as it took one deliberate step toward him. The soldiers began to stir, hands hovering near their weapons, but none dared to act yet. They were all watching, waiting, to see what would happen next. Xerek knelt again, this time not in submission, but as if waiting for Jackson to approach. It was a strange, almost ritualistic gesture. Jackson looked at Rhea, who gave him a nod, her expression anxious but understanding. This was something they needed to solve, something that could change everything. Jackson took a deep breath and walked forward. As he approached Xerek, he felt a strange pull, an energy that seemed to resonate with him. It was as though the creature was speaking directly to his soul, not just his mind. The air around them felt charged, electric. Jackson could hear the distant hum of the alien ship, but the noise seemed to fade as he stepped closer to Xerek. He reached out slowly, and the creature's enormous head moved toward his hand. And then, something incredible happened. As Jackson's fingertips brushed against the creature's thick, leathery skin, a surge of energy flooded through him. His heart raced, and for the briefest moment, he felt as if he were no longer standing on solid ground. His mind, his very essence, was pulled into a place beyond time, a void where he felt like he was floating among stars, galaxies, and alien worlds. Then, it stopped. Jackson stumbled back, gasping for air. His heart pounded in his chest, and his hands were trembling. He looked at Xerek in shock, and the creature's eyes, those piercing, glowing eyes, were filled with a kind of recognition, like it had been waiting for him to understand something. Waiting for him to accept something. "Jackson, what happened?" Rhea asked, rushing to his side, concern etched across her face. I don't know," Jackson gasped. "But that was real. It's like the creature, Xerek, linked with me, somehow." Rhea's eyes widened. "That's impossible. I've studied the Xereks for years. They're brutal, yes, but they don't connect with their prey like this. It's not biological. It's something else." Jackson stood there, still shaken by the connection. He could feel the residual energy humming within him, like a low-frequency vibration that he couldn't escape. He looked at Xerek again, and this time, the creature made no move to rise. It only watched him, its massive head slightly tilted, as though trying to gauge Jackson's next move. "I think it wants me to understand something," Jackson said slowly. "I think it's trying to tell me something." Before Rhea could respond, Commander Xanda's voice broke through the moment, sharp and commanding. "Reese. Corin. Step away from it, now." Jackson turned, his gaze meeting Xanda's with a calm determination. "Commander," this is more than just a beast. It's not what you think. It's trying to communicate. I need more time with it. Xanda's face tightened. Time. You've had enough time, Reese. We're not letting that thing roam free. The military's coming in to contain it. Jackson stepped forward, his expression hardening. You can't contain it. You don't understand. If you try to force it into submission, it will fight back. This creature, this Xerx, it's not just here to destroy. It's here for something else. Xanda's eyes narrowed. And what makes you so sure about that? Jackson didn't answer immediately. He turned back to Xerx, and for a moment, he could feel the weight of the creature's presence in his mind again, as if it were waiting for him to speak the truth. I think, Jackson began, voice steady but filled with a sense of awe. I think it's here because it wants us to understand that it's not just a weapon. It's a part of something much bigger. The war. The conflict between species. This ship, it's not just a ship of conquest. It's a ship of redemption. Xanda stared at him as though he had lost his mind. You're talking nonsense, Reese. We've got orders to bring it in. Now move aside, or we'll make you. But Jackson didn't move. He stood in front of Xerx, the creature's silent presence a heavy weight behind him. He had seen the truth, and he wasn't going to back down. I'm not moving, he said, his voice low, resolute. You're going to have to stop me. There was a moment of tense silence. And then, without warning, the air around them shifted. The ground shook once again, and from the wreckage of the ship, a new sound emerged, a deep, resonant hum. The ship was awakening. The beast's rebellion. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with a new, electric energy. Jackson could feel it, a pulsing force, almost like a heartbeat emanating from the wreckage of the alien ship. The hum that had echoed throughout the colony square became louder, deeper, and the very atmosphere felt charged with an unseen power. Rhea stepped closer to Jackson, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. This is something else. That ship is alive, isn't it? Jackson nodded slowly, still feeling the strange resonance within him. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he knew one thing for certain, whatever Xerx, the Xerx, was, it wasn't just a soldier or a weapon. There was something far deeper at play here, something that could change the course of their future. From the corner of his eye, Jackson saw Commander Xanda's tight, calculating gaze. She had moved closer, but the military commander wasn't backing down. Reese, Xanda said sharply, her voice steady, though it held an edge of warning. This is not a time for your theories. The ship's powering up. We need to act before it's too late. Jackson's gaze shifted back to Xerx. The creature's posture was now poised, its muscular frame standing taller than before, though it didn't make a move to approach anyone. It simply watched him, its enormous eyes filled with something Jackson couldn't quite place, knowledge. Desperation. It was almost as if the creature was waiting for him to give some kind of command. But Jackson had no idea what he was supposed to say. The Xerx were known for being conquerors, warriors bred to fight, to destroy. Yet this one seemed different. And he was certain it wasn't just about survival. We have to stop it from fully activating, Xanda said, the urgency in her tone growing. Once that ship's systems are online, we won't be able to control what happens next. Jackson turned to face her, his voice steady but filled with a quiet authority that surprised even him. Xanda, we don't need to stop it. We need to understand it. The ship, Xerx, none of this is what we thought it was. Xanda's eyes flickered with disbelief, but she didn't challenge him directly. Instead, she shot a look at the soldiers who were now positioned around the colony square, their weapons raised, ready for whatever might come next. Time is running out, Xanda warned again. The military's coming, Reese. You have no idea what you're dealing with here. You think this creature wants peace? It's a weapon. It's a symbol of war. No, Jackson said, his voice rising slightly. It's more than that. This isn't just a creature of war. It's a creature of, he stopped himself, unsure of how to express the impossible realization that had been creeping up on him. I don't think it's here to destroy. I think it's here to protect us. Rhea's eyebrows furrowed. Protect us? How could it protect us? It's a Xerx, an ancient warrior race known for their brutality. I know, Jackson said, his voice quieter now, as if speaking the truth out loud was both liberating and terrifying. But what if the Xerx are more than we think? What if they were made to fight a war that no one told us about? A war that's bigger than just us. For a moment, the colony square was still, the only sound being the low, rhythmic hum coming from the ship. Then, suddenly, something changed. The Xerx, let out a deep, guttural growl that vibrated through the air. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't angry. It was almost like a call, a command, a signal that something was shifting inside the alien creature. Jackson stepped forward, raising his hand slowly as if to signal that they meant no harm. Xerx's head turned slightly, its glowing eyes locking onto Jackson with such intensity that it felt like the weight of the universe was pressing down on him. There was a deep understanding in those eyes, something ancient and profound. And then, as if in response to some unseen force, Xerx began to move. Slowly at first, it lifted its arm, massive and powerful, and extended it outward, toward the center of the colony square. The entire area shook again, and the air grew dense with energy. The Xerx's movements were precise, deliberate, not at all like the chaotic thrashing of a predator. It was as though the creature was performing some kind of ritual, not of destruction, but of awakening. Jackson felt a strange pull, a call to step closer, to understand what Xerx was doing. It wasn't just a physical pull, it was a mental one, like an invisible thread connecting him to the Xerx. He could almost hear the creature's thoughts, even though it wasn't speaking directly. It was as if the very essence of Xerx's being was reaching out to him, seeking something. Rhea hesitated before stepping forward, her hand hovering near her sidearm, still unsure of the alien's intentions. Jackson, what's happening? She whispered. I think it's waking up, Jackson said softly. Not just the ship. Xerx. The whole species. Something about this place, this moment. It's all tied together. As the Xerx raised its arm higher, the air began to hum more intensely. Jackson felt his heart beat faster, his pulse quickening as the energy surrounding them seemed to surge. The ship in the distance flared with light, and the systems within it seemed to be coming online, one by one. Suddenly, without warning, the ground beneath them erupted, sending dirt and debris flying into the air. A deep, resonant pulse shot from the ship, rippling outward in every direction. The shockwave sent Jackson and Rhea stumbling backward, and soldiers fell to the ground as the earth shook violently. But Xerx remained unmoved, standing tall and unyielding. It was as if the creature was absorbing the energy, using it to fuel something deeper. The sound of engines roaring filled the air as several ships, military ships, heavily armed, descended into the colony's atmosphere. They hovered overhead, casting large shadows on the ground below. The military was arriving in full force, their weapons trained on Xerx. Step back, Reese. Commander Zanna yelled. This is your last warning. But Jackson didn't move. He was rooted to the spot, a sense of purpose filling him, something that transcended his role as a simple miner. The energy in the air was unlike anything he had ever felt, it was both terrifying and exhilarating. Xerx's massive head turned toward Jackson again, and for the first time, the Xerx spoke, not with words, but with an overwhelming surge of emotion, a flood of memories and images, a vision that filled Jackson's mind. The war. The galaxy at war. The great devastation. The lost species. We were meant to protect. We were made to fight, but now, we fight to survive. You are the key. You must choose. Jackson's heart raced as the vision cleared, leaving him breathless. He staggered backward, his eyes wide. He had seen it, everything. The truth. The war the Xerx had been created to fight, the destruction that had ravaged the galaxy. And now, Xerx, in all its power, had come here for one reason, to stop it from happening again. Before he could process the enormity of it, Xanda's voice echoed in his ears. Reese, I don't care what you think you saw. Step aside now, or I'll order the strike. Jackson turned toward the approaching military ships, his mind racing. The Xerx weren't enemies, they were guardians, sent to protect, to end the war that had nearly destroyed the galaxy. And he was the key. But would he make the right choice? The final choice. The tension in the air was palpable, so thick it felt as though the atmosphere itself was holding its breath. The ground still vibrated faintly beneath Jackson's feet, a constant hum from the alien ship that seemed to reverberate in his chest. The ships above, the military fleet descending rapidly toward the colony, cast ominous shadows that stretched long across the cracked earth below. Jackson's eyes flickered between the incoming military, the massive Xerx, and the alien ship. His heart was pounding in his chest, his thoughts spinning wildly. He had seen the vision. He knew the truth now, Xerx, and the Xerx race as a whole, had not come to destroy humanity. No. They had come to protect it. They had come to stop a war that would obliterate the galaxy. And he, Jackson Reese, was somehow the catalyst, the key, to ending it all. His pulse quickened as the words echoed in his mind. You must choose. The ground beneath them trembled again, but this time it was different. The Xerx was no longer just standing still. Xerx's enormous body began to glow from within, its body radiating a strange energy as though it were absorbing the power from the wreckage of the ship and the pulse emanating from the very core of the planet. A low hum filled the air, deep and resonant. Jackson could feel the weight of it. This was it, the final moment. I don't know what's going to happen, he whispered, turning to Rhea. She stood by his side, her face a mask of apprehension but also something else, something that Jackson could read. Trust. Faith in him. You don't have to know, Jackson, Rhea said softly, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. You're not alone in this. But Jackson knew that, in the end, the choice was his. The Xerx had come to him because they recognized something in him, something that no one else could understand, not the military, not even Rhea. He was the link, the only one who could bridge the ancient alien species and humanity. His connection with Xerx was not a coincidence, it was destiny. The military ships were nearly upon them now. The soldiers inside were ready for whatever orders Xanda would give. Their weapons were locked and loaded, and the threat of violence was imminent. But Jackson couldn't back down. He couldn't let them destroy everything. He couldn't allow the galaxy to repeat the mistakes of its past. The Xerx were not the enemy. Humanity wasn't the enemy. It was something much older, much darker, that was threatening to tear the galaxy apart. Without hesitation, Jackson stepped forward. He moved toward Xerx, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. He could feel Rhea's presence behind him, but he didn't look back. He had to do this alone. As he reached the Xerx's massive form lowered, its eyes, those glowing, ancient eyes, locked onto his. There was no fear in them now, only quiet recognition. The creature's head tilted slightly, as if acknowledging Jackson's determination. A deep, reverberating voice echoed in Jackson's mind, one that was not his own, but one that seemed to fill his very being. You have seen it. You have felt it. The war, the destruction, the darkness. The future of the galaxy is in your hands, Jackson Reese. Will you choose peace, or war? Jackson's breath caught in his throat. The enormity of the decision threatened to overwhelm him, but he couldn't falter. He had seen the truth. He had felt the weight of history in that vision, millennia of conflict, of suffering, of destruction. But he had also felt something else, the possibility of redemption. He was the bridge, the one who could stop it all, or bring about its end. He closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, letting the cold air fill his lungs. The ships overhead grew louder, the military descending in a final attempt to take control. But Jackson knew what he had to do. He opened his eyes, and with resolve, he stepped closer to Zarek. He spoke, his voice strong and clear, though every part of him was shaking with the weight of the moment. "We will not fight," Jackson declared, his voice ringing through the colony square. "We will not destroy. We will not repeat the mistakes of the past." The alien creature, Zarek, lowered its massive head once more, as if understanding Jackson's words. The glowing eyes softened, and the hum that filled the air began to quiet. The energy surrounding them began to dissipate, but not in a way that suggested retreat. Instead, it felt like a release of centuries of tension, a release of ancient burdens that had been carried too long. Jackson turned to face Xanda and the incoming military forces, his voice rising so they could all hear him. "Do you see it?" he shouted, pointing toward the Zareks. "This creature is not our enemy. The war you think we must fight, the destruction you think is inevitable, it's a lie. We have a choice. We can end this conflict. We can stop the war. But we have to choose peace." Xanda's eyes were filled with disbelief, but Jackson saw something else in her gaze, something that bordered on uncertainty. She was a commander, hardened by years of duty, but in that moment, it was as though a crack had appeared in her armor. She was questioning everything she had been taught, everything she had believed. "No," Xanda said, her voice cold, though there was a slight quiver in it. "This is a weapon. It's a threat, and it needs to be neutralized. Orders are clear." Jackson's heart sank, but he didn't look away. He knew this was the moment. "You've been lied to," he said, his voice unwavering. "The Zareks are not weapons. They're not here to conquer. They're here to protect. They're here to stop the war that will destroy everything." There was a long, pregnant silence. The military ships hovered above, the soldiers poised and ready. The tension could have been cut with a knife. But then, slowly, one by one, the weapons lowered. The soldiers, still unsure, began to step back. Jackson's eyes met Xanda's one last time. Her face was a mask of indecision, but behind her eyes, he saw it, the flicker of understanding. And then, at long last, Xanda gave a single nod. A reluctant surrender, but a surrender nonetheless. The Zarek, had won. The military withdrew, their ships retreating into the sky. The sound of the engines slowly faded, and the quiet of the colony square returned. But the air was different now, charged with the knowledge of what had been averted, what had been saved. Jackson stood in the center of the square, looking at Zarek one final time. The Zareks lowered its massive head again, and in that moment, Jackson felt a deep, unspoken bond with the creature. It was more than just a protector, it was a symbol of something greater, unity, understanding, and the possibility of peace. "You did it," Rhea said, her voice soft, filled with awe. Jackson turned to her, a weary but satisfied smile crossing his face. "We did it," he corrected her. "We all did. The Zareks were not here to destroy humanity. They were here to save it." And in that moment, the galaxy had been given a chance at redemption.